horror group, All Things Horror. Thank you, Mr. Bean, and thank you everybody for attending the Hellraiser II panel. So without further ado, let's start introducing them. Let's start with Mr. Simon Bamford. Next up, Nicholas Vince. Barbie Wilde. Check. Imogen Boorman. And Pinewood himself, Doug Bradley. Check. Squelch, check. Squelch.
Actually, do that again real quick.
Check. Invaders from Mars. Is this an audition for the fucking Muppet Show? Alrighty, let's,
I apologize in advance.
that's okay. Once you get on stage with Tony Moran, it's all good.
Yes.
So let's just go down the line real quick. How did you all become involved in the Hellraiser franchise?
Clive asked me and I said yes.
Clive told me I was doing it. No, I didn't. He asked me and I said yes.
Clive asked me and I said yes.
This is really unhelpful, isn't it? This is not.
Thank you very much.
Barbie was doing her lipstick at the time. Clive asked her to do it and Barbie was doing her lipstick and Clive just took it as a yes.
Am I on? I'm on. My agent called and said, we have an audition for you for a horror film. I said, which one? He said, it's the sequel to Hellraiser. And I went, I'm not sure I want to go because it scared me too much. Especially, Pinewood was kind of an interesting character, but oh my God, chattering. But then I thought, wow, the character of Julie was so awesome. Operatic diva. And anybody who kills people with a hammer to the back of the head to get the skin of her ex-lover back, you have to admire that kind of dedication. So I went to the audition. I talked to Tony Randall. I knew what a Cenobite was, and he didn't. He said it was a word that Clive had made up, and I said, no, it actually means a member of an order. And so I'm making up for the short answers before me. And maybe that was what, I don't know. Also, I had classical mime training. Clive was always very interested in mine. Maybe I just fit the previous actress's costume. I have no idea. Oh, hey, I was thin back then. I was told that it was Grace's costume.
Really?
Yes, I was told. And that's why I had backache, because she had a slight curvature to the spine.
I'm amazed. Yeah, because I know it was very specifically made for Grace because she did.
Yeah, that's why I had backache. Every time they laced me into the costume, it sort of twisted my spine a bit. The pain, the pleasure.
Dedication to art.
Yeah.
Yes.
Still not speaking. I didn't really know what I was getting involved with. My agent just said there's an audition for you next week. Can we get time off school?
Time off school?
Yeah, I was at boarding school. I had to get special permission on the condition that I finished all my work at the time, and I was 15, and I had to tell them where I was going, who I was meeting, where I was, when I was going to be back, and so I had to sign out.
Did they know what kind of film?
No.
Did your parents know?
No.
Just.
No. No. My mother didn't think I'd get it anyway. She just thought it'd be a good experience for me to go on the train, get to an appointment. And I did. I met Tony, and he asked me to watch 3 Scrooges. He left me in a room in the hotel watching 3 Scrooges.
Stooges.
Sorry, Stooges. Beg my pardon, sorry.
What did he?
And he said, I want you to study the reactions on these faces, especially.
The Three Stooges?
Yeah, it's from Christmas Carol, Christmas Carol, Christmas Carol.
Yeah. Exciting.
One. Two. And a half. Are you really telling us here today that you based your entire performance on Curly?
What was it? What was it? Mo. What was the third one? It was Larry, Curly, Mo.
And the guy who didn't speak. Yeah. Yeah.
So you based yours on...
No, Tony asked me.
Yes.
And then he asked me to react to certain situations, to imagine there was a monster, and he described it. And then I learned about the Skimmels people.
Do you think while you were sitting in this little room watching this, there were like mirrors all around, two-way mirrors, and he was actually sitting watching you from behind?
He was not creepy at all, and I had been to some very creepy auditions that I wriggle out of and run away from, but Tony was a really, really nice guy. He obviously loved and was looking forward to doing this movie very much. He was just very gentle and very very definite about what he wanted. He kept saying he wanted somebody with a bittersweet look. Yeah, and he was quite... he was just very nice, and I got a recall and a screen test for this, and in the end my mother let me do it.
Did she watch Hellraiser?
Had she read the script?
What did the boarding school say when it came out?
Nobody knew. I just got the part, and I missed all the next term, so nobody really knew until it came out, and it was kept from the press at the time because it was quite a salubrious boarding school that I was at.
Wow. Wow. You were 15 years old when you made it.
I had my 60th birthday on set. So no birthday cake.
I love how your mind immediately goes to birthday cake when you hear that
It's
story.
So the second one was filmed in the famous Pinewood studios. Talk about filming there and what that was like.
Well, it was a big upgrade from Cricklewood Production Village with its duck ponds and willow trees. I don't think it had seen a movie for a while. You had to sort of pause while the airplanes went over, you know. To be going through the main gates of Pinewood Studios, to me, was fairly mind-blowing in thinking about all the people that had gone through those gates beforehand. And, you know, now having one's own dressing room with one's name in beautiful copperplate handwriting on a card in front of it, which I still have. So I was excited to a stupid extent to become a part of the history of Pinewood Studios.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were treated very nicely. I felt like a little star.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And of course at Pinewood there's loads of other films being filmed there at the time. I remember Batman, was it? Was being, and they had the Gotham City, the very first kind of revamping of it, and they had Gotham City set.
Of course, they had the huge 007 soundstage still standing before it burned down. And that huge tank with the biggest water.
Was that for Octopus?
Water.
Yeah.
Was that for Octopus?
Yes.
Basically had a big tank, you know, about that deep in water and painted sky on the background, where they used to film things like lifeboats sinking and lifeboat movies.
I remember staring at the Oscar in a cabinet in the front entrance hall. Pinewood was like a big stately building, the actual house of Pinewood. And the entrance hall was pretty impressive, and cabinets containing Oscars, which I stood and stared at. It remains to this day the closest I've ever been.
But I mean, the Pinewood studio appears in the movie because that's Chenard Institute is the battle. is the back of Pinewood Studios.
Yes. And all the chases around the cemetery in Nightbreed is the back of Pinewood.
And the end scene where Tiffany, they leave.
Yeah.
That's the very last scene. I think that's the gardens in the back view.
Yeah.
I never saw that. I never was allowed outside.
There were reasons.
We went one time, didn't we all go to the cafeteria once? And we were
I remember going to the cafeteria, yeah, they wouldn't let us in the way we were dressed.
They
Yeah.
didn't let us put people on there.
We weren't wearing
Toy
ties.
place.
They were very.
And there were people sitting in their period costume, and there were all these different films were being made, and then these four Cenobites tried to get in.
You'll put the other diners off their meal. Yeah.
My first
I thought
memory,
you guys weren't allowed to eat in your costumes. I was told you had to suck through straws.
we ate a little bit. We must have.
I think the
We
first
were
thing,
allowed to eat, but we were being very carefully restricted. No, nothing greasy, no meats, because the grease gets under the makeup and starts to break down the adhesive, and that makes your afternoon hell, because the entire afternoon is then taken up with pesky makeup artists sticking paintbrushes of glue down here and then doing this to you.
Isn't that why you also had to use the cigarette holder too? Because cigarette smoke is bad.
Allegedly, yes. And, I was a smoker then. We were given these cigarette holders. So there are pictures of Pinhead looking like some kind of very bizarre and twisted extra from a Noel Coward movie in dressing gown and cigarette holder. This was the theory, that it would keep the nicotine away from the makeup. In later years, I dispensed with the cigarette holders and took to eating meat.
and actually, one of the ways we could see where we were progressing financially was, I remember on Hellraiser 1, Doug had a kind of rather shaggy old dressing gown, and I seem to remember by Hellraiser 2, it was more kind of silk. So,
Well, it was mohair from a private farm. I had flown in specially with the Turkish cigarettes and the handmaidens to supply them to me.
Were they rolled on a beautiful girl's thigh? Were the cigarettes rolled on a beautiful girl's thigh?
I was never informed about that. It may well be true.
My first memory of Hellraiser, well, not the first one, because we did all the makeup tests, but I was flying back because I went to visit my folks for Christmas, and sound, and
check.
check, and my plane was delayed 24 hours, and so I grabbed a cab from Heathrow to. It's a metal plate in my head. I knew it was going to give me trouble. So I had to go straight from Heathrow to Pinewood and then into the chair.
We paid him to do that, and we said, if Barbie talks too much, can you do something with no sound?
But the first scene that I had to film after 6 hours of waiting was the scene where we enter into Channard's lair, and all four of us appear to much fabulous music by Christopher Young, which wasn't there at the time, of course, with Dry Ice, all that sort of stuff. And I was so altered by that point. I've been up for 36 hours or something. I don't know, so I keep telling the story, but I'll tell it again because I think it's amusing. For some reason, I was possessed by an insane desire to ask Tony a question, so I went up and said, Tony, what's my motivation? And he, she's such a wanky question, I'm sorry. And he said, you're dead. Whether that was him worrying for like 3 hours about where I was, because I was, stuck on a plane.
And Hitchcock would have said, you're fiend, my dear.
Exactly. It's like a paragon.
I
check.
Check.
Republic, check.
Okay, well, we're good for the moment now. Doug and Barbie, there's a Laserdisc that came out from Japan that has you two dressed up as surgeons.
Yeah.
Is that one of the ones that should pass?
No.
Is that something you guys filmed?
For years and years, we said that had never been, we just did a photo session or something, and weren't we like totally flummoxed to see that there was actually, we filmed it.
I've still yet to see proof of this. I mean, basically, Pete Atkins, who wrote the screenplay for HellBound, wrote, and in the screenplay occupies about that much space. On paper, it's a very simple gag. So, Tiffany and Kirsty are running through the Channard Institute, and they turn a corner. Two, quote-unquote, masked and gowned figures come out of the room. And one of them speaks and says, "What are you girls doing in this part of the hospital? You know it's out of bounds," or words to that effect. And then it says, as he speaks, his mask fills with blood, pins burst through the mask, he pulls the mask off to reveal that he is Pinhead. As he's speaking, his voice is turning into Pinhead's. Of course, Tiffany says nothing. Kirsty would say, you know, as she tended to, some variation on screaming and saying, "What the fuck is that?" and they would turn and run away. That's the gag. Very simply written, not that simple to film, because masked and gowned. So if you don't know that this is Pinhead, then this is a mask that covers the whole of his head, presumably. Or he looks like a regular doctor and will then transform into Pinhead. But you can't do what they did, which is Barbie and I walk out onto set and they give us surgeons' masks and gowns. So our masks cover that area, and it's kind of obvious that this is Pinhead wearing a surgeon's mask. Plus, Pinhead has pins, right? We know this, I think. So I can't even wear the surgeon's mask properly because it sticks out at, pin distance, and you've got wires to deal with and all the rest of it. So my memory is we stood around for a very long time while
Have you not seen the footage of us stalking around? And
No.
I was like doing
So
some
they
really trappy
tried to
mind
film-
movements.
So they tried to film it. I haven't seen it.
It's on the.
Oh, it was on YouTube.
It's also on the Arrow, the most recent Arrow release of the first three movies.
I've
of the
seen-
DVD.
I haven't watched the movie, so I have better things to do with my time. My memory is we stood around for a long time while people went.
This is going to cost £50,000 to film.
Because even if you can sort out what this whole head mask is, it's you've got to film that. No, I'm aware of the image, but then you've got to go away and do inserts of the mask filling with blood and the pins coming through, and then you've got to come back to me removing the thing to reveal Pinhead. So it's actually quite a complicated deal, which is very often the case.
And this is before CGI, of course.
Yes.
It wasn't even on the horizon then.
All got to be done as practical effects in real time. It's very often the case that something that occupies that much space in a screenplay is going to be the most complicated and time-consuming thing to film. The easiest thing to film, is 20 pages of straight dialogue. You'll get through that in 5 or 10 minutes if you've got actors who remember their lines.
That's the challenge.
So that's my memory of standing around while people discussed it, and then they agreed that this was never going to work, and we were stood down.
Well, you're in it. You're running down a corridor. I was stalking around looking like a robot. It was just so odd seeing this.
It's weird as well how often this happens, and it annoys me because that's simply lack of preparation. People are paid to think about this long before the actors get on set. Now, in HellBound, Pinhead gets his throat cut, right? When he confronts Channel. And I kept asking Jeff Portis, who was responsible for my makeup on the first 2 movies, how are we going to make this work? How are we going to make this work? And I knew how the practical effect was going to work, which is basically I had a prosthetic piece on my neck, which is split, is closed up with mortician's wax, with a blood pump in it that goes round the back. And there's one special effects team behind me pumping blood. So on cue, I throw my neck back, the mortician's wax breaks, the prosthetic piece splits open, and the blood comes out. So I kept asking, how are we going to make this work? Right up to the point at which we got to set. I said, how are we going to make this work? And they said, well, you throw your head back. I said, yes, I understand the practical. Has anybody looked at Pinhead's costume recently? Because he has a leather collar up to here. So I can throw my head back all I like. Nothing's happening. You're not seeing anything. You can't cut my throat through this. Can we get a pair of scissors and cut his collar off? Nobody notices this. Nobody notices this. Up to the point at which I turn around to confront Chanard, Pinhead has leather collar. He turns around, no collar. Chanard does that, and I go, and down we go. It's all in the preparation. Do your fucking homework.
So, from the Cenobites, what do you believe makes them so popular and sort of stand out from, the other 80s horror franchises? What about the Cenobites that resonates so well?
People are just really, really weird.
That's a nice thing to say. I think because Clive has created a unique new kind of monster, and that really they were completely different. When I went to see the first one, I'd never seen these creatures before, and I came out and said, "Wow, what just happened there?" It's a very unique thing, and I think people have not only plugged into that, but I also think they've plugged into perhaps the. Should I mince my words and say rather dubious? Yeah, the S&M, cool, whatever's pain, sensuality aspect, that's kind of forbidden stuff. Your mother wouldn't have liked that, and it's a forbidden and, of course, taboo is exciting. And so that's probably why it's resonated through the decades.
Plus they had a kind of historical kind of feel to them. You could feel their backstory without really
They've been
understanding
away from
anything. And there was a religious kind of edge to them as well. And they just came from Clive's amazing mind. So.
Timeless is the word I always use, and I've always said that Pinhead is very, very different from, say, Freddy or Jason or Michael or Leatherface. I mean, he's not the boogie. The Cenobites are not boogeymen, really, hiding behind corners, waiting to jump out on you arbitrarily and stick you with the stiletto or whatever. There's a whole process here. You have to learn about the lament configuration, find one, buy one, open it with the right motivation.
It's not hands that call us, but desire.
And then you'd be confronted by Pinhead and the Cenobites. Even then, the first thing Pinhead wants to do is stop and pass the time of day with you, and have a chat about the price of milk. But Simon touched on it. It's completely out of time, not only with what was going on in 80s horror. What I think Clive does absolutely brilliantly is you can take the Cenobites out of Hellraiser completely, and you have a fairly routine, pedestrian, but serviceable slasher movie. You put the Cenobites in, and Clive drops gothic horror into a contemporary slasher horror film. You could show images of the Cenobites to a monk in the 14th century, and he would get it. immediately. And they don't age. I mean, you know, there's a degree of big hair and shoulder pads going on in HellBound that tell us we're in the 1980s. You know, only that decade did that shit. But in 50 years' time, if we're all still here to be able to look at it, 50 years' time, 150 years' time, 200 years' time, the image of the Cenobites will be as powerful as it was the first time people saw them in the cinema, I think. And that's, again, a mark of Clive's genius. And the fact that he was creating the Cenobites almost as a byplay. His focus in the film is not on Pinhead and the Cenobites. His focus with Hellraiser, his big thing about Hellraiser was that he was creating the first great female monster in horror movies, in Julia. That was his thing. I think he was actually pissed off that Pinhead became the poster boy for the movie, because that wasn't his intention at all. How he ever thought that you could put the four of us on the big screen and not have fans go, oh, okay, well, never mind the rest of this crap. These guys we like, and these guys we would like more of. Even when they were doing the first test screenings of Hellraiser, and I was told me that all the cards coming out were all talking about the Cenobites, and he was a bit annoyed by this, because this was not where he wanted his audience's focus to go.
Do you mind, I just kind of, in a funny sort of way, I always found the Cenobites kind of as sympathetic people you could sort of talk to and reason with in some sort of way. But Julia and Frank are truly human monsters of the worst kind, you know. And well, I mean, Julia morphed into one. Frank was always dubious to begin with. And as I said from the beginning, I thought Julia was an extraordinary, wonderful character. But it's you know, in Batman, they say the chicks love the car. It's almost like these outfits, the way, the look of them, that's what captured people's imagination.
And it's a familiar theme in Clive's work, that the monsters don't perceive themselves the monsters, because Julia and Frank are the monsters in Hellraiser. The monsters don't perceive themselves as being monsters. And again, I keep pointing at you because you have a Nightbreed. Of course, it's a theme that is absolutely writ large in Nightbreed. The freaks just want to be left alone in a corner of the cemetery to be freaks, and they'll be perfectly happy in their freakishness. It's the people who are really fucked up, and it's the people who are creating the problems and are the monsters.
And that fear of the unknown, fear of the different, which is a current theme across the world at the moment, it seems.
So, Simon and Nicholas, talk a little bit about your process in the makeup chair, where, especially Nicholas, you seem to have some of the more intricate work.
Yeah, well, I mean, with the apologies if you've heard the story before, basically, Simon and I both went through more or less the same process. There is one story. Simon and I had to... Did you have body cast done as well, Doug?
No.
No, I had a body cast done, you had a body cast.
I didn't have a body cast done. I do remember going to have my head cast done, and there was a body cast that was there that was definitely Mick Jagger naked. That they're supposed to destroy them.
At Jane Wildgoose's?
Yes.
It was Peter Sellers.
Sellers naked.
It was.
You would have been able to tell.
Now I think I might be lying. I think I may have had a upper body cast done.
You did.
Because I remember standing.
Cast done.
Did I?
You did. I'll tell you why.
I remember standing with my hands on pieces of wood.
Yeah. Because
But we were all modelled on Peter Sellers.
Oh, okay. Because they did these body casts particularly for me, because obviously my costume was sewn around my cast, my body cast. And I do remember that Simon's body cast was being carried up the stairs to Jane Wildgoose's, and the step broke, and Jane grazed her leg and ended up with a scab on her leg. And I was staying at Jane's night sometime, and she walked in one morning, had a beautiful little presentation box, like a wedding ring in.
I don't know where this is going.
And she said, Nick, I just wanted to show you this. And she opened up the presentation box, and she had the scab on the end of a pin inside the box. That was, that was Jane. Jane's a lovely lady, isn't a lovely lady?
Well, Jane, I should explain, had worked in the theatre, in the Dog Company, the theatre company that Clive and I were members of, and Simon and Nick were involved with as well. And she had designed and made costumes for us for the plays that we were doing. So she, at Clive's invitation, and again it was a really clever stroke by Clive. She had her own department. The Cenobites' costumes were their own department. They weren't part of the special effects department. They weren't part of the wardrobe department. They had their own budget, and Jane had nothing else to worry about other than getting the Cenobites' costumes right, which she did to a brilliant extent. You lost your bustle, which you should have had.
Barbie.
The female Cenobite in Jane's original design has, you know what I mean by a bustle, the Victorian bustle that women used to wear.
What's it?
She had
To emphasize one's bottom.
a bustle, but as it were without the dress. It was like a cage. So there was a floor to it, but it had the bars around it. Inside it was the mummified body of her dead baby, which she carried with her everywhere she went. And it was vetoed, presumably because we must uphold standards of taste and decency in the Hellraiser movie. I thought it was an absolutely brilliant idea, and it went by the board.
I have an image now of the female Cenobite twerking.
She put so much detail into, I mean, Pinhead's weapons were beautifully made. She had a guy, I can't remember his name, who made props for the Royal Opera House in London make the tools. The handles had images of torture, people being tortured, inlaid into the handles. Did we ever see any of it? No, we didn't. Never seen.
All of my torture belts on the front had all these instruments that were just exquisite, and the detail on them was incredible, but again, they never saw them. So, yeah.
Can I just ask a question, because your memory is probably better than mine, but I remember with skullcap work, I had a lot of, it was the 80s, I had a huge head of red hair, and it was over, I mean, skullcap, and the hair goes down to the neck, hence the high color, because then you don't see the hair. I was just wondering, is it because perhaps there were very few shots of us from behind, because of the hiding certain details that showed the sort of how the suits worked and stuff, costumes worked. I mean, that's a beautiful detail, but I just wonder if it was vetoed out of practical reasons.
I guess you just don't tend to film the back of people.
Because Cheshire was filmed from the back. From my first entrance, I was filmed from the back, and the mask had shrunk when we came to do it's the first day, my first day of filming. So you see Cheshire from the front as he walks in, and then you see the old over the shoulder. And the mask was supposed to join at the very back, but it had shrunk. So it didn't look like, so you had this V, and Clive just said, what is this, Mike? Clive just said, we'll fill it with blood. And I think that became the line for the film. Whenever there was any problem with anything, we just filled it with blood. Yeah.
Nick and I's masks were full heads anyway, so it was a case of pretty much just kind of forcing them down onto our skulls, and the insides of them were made to fit exactly to our faces.
Yeah, except of course I had the joy of the teeth and the dentigrade.
Yeah.
Oh, you had that. No, you had that as well. You had the joy of the. So
we both sat in a corner because also our noses were sealed up, so we couldn't breathe through our noses. We had false teeth in, so we couldn't close our mouths. So we both would sit in the corner going, sucking the saliva out of our mouths so we didn't suffocate.
My strongest memory, and it still affects me now, super glue. I cannot stand super glue because they used to attach the teeth to the mask to form some sort of gum so that when I was moving the teeth inside, they didn't just move inside the mask. They cut up condoms and then they used super glue to attach the mask to the teeth. And I can still, is the stench of super glue because I only had a little hole in the mask there to see out of it. And just the fumes just went straight right onto my eyeball, the left eyeball. Oh, God.
Were they fresh condoms or were they...
You mean some of yours you did lying around or something? All I remember is the fact that it was Stuart Conrad, who we've worked with recently. Stuart was 16 years old when he made this, and he was a little runner. And of course, the guys just used to send Stuart out to buy condoms and KY jelly. Because that's the other thing they used to put in our mouth. They put KY jelly in your mouth? Oh, yeah, no, I so once they glued the condoms into my mouth and so on, to make sure it looked as if I had saliva in my mouth, they put KY jelly in the mask and so on. So Stuart was sent out to buy condoms and
I'm feeling
KY
unwell.
jelly.
They did have a running joke with me, which they never told me about until about 10 years ago, that they, so you didn't see me through the makeup, they used to make my mouth up black, so that if you did ever see through, you'd never see me. And there was a running joke with the crew that the black would get bigger and bigger, and there's a picture of like the whole of the bottom half of my mouth is completely black. But they hadn't told me that that's what they were doing, and it was who could make Simon up with the blackest face. It was just kind of growing over.
Their makeups took a fraction of the time that mine and Barbie's did, but I wouldn't have swapped the process of my makeup application
For the hell of what they went through.
and Nick was blind, which was always entertaining because he had to be kind of, guided onto set and told where the camera was. Okay, and chatter.
That's all I had to do. So when Ashley's doing, when I first come in, when Ashley's doing the whole thing with the mouth, the fingers into the mouth, the reason why I'm holding the back of the head is so that I can work out where I'm supposed to be putting the fingers in. I couldn't see what the hell I was doing. And it's down to Ashley to be able to sell that, to make that sequence actually work.
There were times, I think, when you were solid trooper chattering away, and I was aware that you were actually off camera. Nobody was going to tell you.
No, I had one thing to do in this movie, and I was going to do it to the best of my ability.
On the Hellraiser I, when we all get sent back to hell, and they had a sequence where I was about to stab Kirsty's boyfriend, and a house fell on top of me, and they had all this polystyrene house and full of earth dust and everything else, and my mask was covered in KY jelly to make it look slick and slimy, and again I was blind, so I was standing there and they were going, okay, he's in front of you now, lift up your hand, okay, and action. And I stood there and they dropped tons of polystyrene and full of earth, and I stood there and they went, cut! Bamford, what are you doing? Why didn't you fall? You're supposed to collapse? Did you not understand? I went, I didn't know you dropped it. I couldn't feel anything at all on top of it. So it became a kind of 1920s. Okay, he's in front of you now. You lift your arm up, okay, and go to stab him now. Okay, the house is falling on you now, okay. Just acted by numbers.
You do it so well.
Thank you.
So we're getting towards the end of the panel, but I just wanted to ask, in HellBound, we see that the Cenobites actually do have human backstories. Do you believe that's an important part of the evolution of the Cenobites to sort of buy into them more, that they're not just being what they did come from different things?
It's a very philosophical question. Well, in the case of Pinhead, we'd already given that game away at the top of the movie, with Elliot Spencer being turned into Pinhead. So it's less of a dramatic moment when it comes. I guess it relates back to the beginning of the film. I mean, I knew, talking to Clive before doing Hellraiser, that Pinhead had been human. I didn't know who, and I didn't know when, whether it was yesterday or 1,000 years ago. I had no idea. I kind of tied that to a sense of melancholy in him for a humanity that he'd lost but couldn't remember, which also explained to me why he was so damn interested in human beings, in humanity. I don't know, your turn.
I suppose it says that we all have the ability to be a Cenobite deep in us somewhere. That anybody could become a Cenobite. Anybody's got that evil or that passion or that belief. Anybody could be there. I think that's where Clive was going with it.
Can you find the inner Cenobite in you?
Clive? I honestly don't know. There you go. Actors doing their research. I never asked him. I don't know.
I've written.
It said in the script, so I did it.
In the script. But I wrote, because I think Barbie and Simon probably felt the same way as I did when we read the script and discovered, well, I don't know what point you discovered, that we weren't going to be seen once we took the makeup off. But actually when they transformed back, they were, unlike Doug, it wasn't going to be us on camera. It was really obvious for me because I knew I wasn't going to be playing a little boy when it happened. So I've written backstories, I've written 2 backstories now, different ideas for what the Chatter really is about.
I spent the 3 months of Hellraiser II eating Dunkin' Donuts, trying to bulk myself up so they could actually use me, but it just didn't work.
Well, since I was dead anyway, I was sort of unaware of what the backstory was being. I don't know, has any of you read the HellBound novella, which is the basis for the Hellraiser film franchise? And I was asked to write a short story about a female Cenobite, and so I went back to the original, which of course the lead Cenobite in that film is seen in the novella.
So if you buy my book, which I
Yeah.
I was wondering when she was going to get to this. Carry on.
Voices of the Damned contains 3 female Cenobite stories about an origin story of a female Cenobite. None turns to Cenobite. Second one, she invents her own limited configuration. And finally, in the rebellion of the great female Cenobites, she gets male Cenobites' bucks, and then something horrible happens. And I'm going to write another story called Queen of the Labyrinth. I've also written a book called The Venus Complex about a serial killer. What was the question?
Shameless.
It's in England. I love the way the Brits put stuff, right? I must do some book pimping. That you just saw a shameless example of what the Brits call book pimping. It's like you're taught in your work about love. It's, buy my book. What have you been up to?
Making movies, writing books. Short film, The Night Whispered, is hopefully on the festival circuit at the moment. 2 books, little books of short stories, Other People's Darkness, What Monsters Do, available from Amazon and my desk. Yeah.
Simon, what have you been up to recently?
A lot of sex.
Well, one of us had to be.
You're in a film called Starfish, aren't you?
I am, yeah.
I'm sorry, I sort of taken over here.
It's wonderful.
And what's it about?
Starfish? It's a true story. It's not horror. My parents are so delighted. They finally go to the cinema. It's a true story about a family facing a horrendous ordeal, and it's out in October.
Doug, what have you been up to recently?
I planted a basil plant.
Didn't your
in
dog
my
have a lemon
front
with
yard.
us?
And nearly wasn't able to come this weekend because the kennels refused to take our dog because he got skunked. And they said he still stank. So we might have had to travel 6 hours in a hearse with a 60-pound German Shepherd.
What smell is that?
They changed their minds. And he's good now. He's had a vinegar bath. That's all I do is wash my dog and plant basil and mint and sage and thyme too. Yes. Yeah.
Parsley, sage, rosemary.
Parsley too. No
The
rosemary.
herbs.
The
Lavender.
herbs.
Lavender and
You won't know
hibiscus.
anything what we're talking about now. There was a program called The Herbs.
And feeding cicadas to my girlfriend's son's turtle that you should call a tortoise. It was called Mr. T, which stands for tortellini. There is a video of him eating a live cicada. Ziggy. We had a short list of names, and Ziggy was among them. And this is a true story. Steph and I were driving to York in Pennsylvania. We still weren't quite sure. We had a Thorn was a possibility, surname from the Omen, and we were still discussing it. We were pretty certain that it would be Ziggy, and this literally happened because we were driving over the Highlands, the Laurel Highlands in Pennsylvania. We'd lost the signal on the radio station. Through the static came, "When Ziggy played guitar." End of discussion.
Lemmy, I've been filming with the Great Glen Arts Company in the Highlands of Scotland. A modern take on Jane Eyre. It's Celtic Jane, it's called.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, some lovely locations in Moniac Castle and Relink House. And it's all done for Save the Children, so it's a work of love. I'm enjoying it very much. It's my first acting project in 15 years or something.
Wow. Wow, it's gorgeous.
Yeah, it's very beautiful out there. There's lots of scenes of Jane writing diaries and walking through the Highlands. The alternate title is The Diaries of Jane Pinewood, and it's the baby of another Clive. It's Clive McColonami. And he's the writer, the director, the editor. He does the work of 100 Men, and he does it all for love, and he's finding talent up in the Highlands. He's a great man. Two great Clives.
Well, thank you very much for taking time out. Go see these guys at the table, give an autograph and a picture. Put your hands together for the cast.